hopped up on brush pens. That's good stuff. We're all hopped up on brush pens around here. I would say, I don't know. I must have got. I'm always trying out brush pens for inking. The best brush is a watercolor brush. Usually, the traditional inking brush since the 50s is a Winsor Newton Series 7, number 2 or number 3, and like I said, those have always been the traditional brushes, but there's so many brush pens now and brush markers that like a generation of cartoonists now don't even know how to use actual brushes. They use brush pens and brush markers. And I'm always trying out different ones myself just because, they're fun to try out, even though they're really only convenient. They're good if like if you go to the coffee shop and want to use a brush and ink, a brush pen is good for that because you don't have to dip your pen in it. But it's just nowhere near as good. It's like, the difference between a car and a sports car. The Winsor Newton Series 7 is a sports car. But a lot of younger cartoonists just don't know that because, like I said, they've been using brush pens their whole life. Like I just saw, occasionally I'll see on Twitter or something, some artist going, "Oh, you really got to try this brand brush pens. They're the best thing ever." And I usually always try them, and then I go, "They're pretty good, but they're not a real brush." I always like try out the brush pens, and then when I need to use something with a brush, I go get an actual brush. Good evening, Sleepy Reader.
Hey.
How are you tonight? We should have Chris here with us tonight. I assume he's late. He was late last week, so I'll see if he's late.
He's going to be inking throughout the whole show again.
Maybe he's moved on to coloring.
Because
I think he should have finished with the inking. Because he was down to like 10 pages, I think, last week. We'll see if something interrupted him. So what mysterious things were you up to this week?
Actually, nothing mysterious at all.
That's the mystery.
No. We do have an auto racing event in my hometown this weekend. So a couple of hours ago, I went out and met one of my racing driver friends.
Yeah.
He's driving an Alfa Romeo in the local hill climb.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I wonder how many pros know how to use brushes at all. I would say a small percent these days. Because even before digital, not every inker used a brush. There's Chris.
What's up, guys?
We're talking brushes right now because I just got art supplies.
Brushes.
And how there's a whole generation of cartoonists now who never use brushes. They use either brush pens or microns, whatever they got. I don't know how many cartoonists know how to use brushes anymore.
Kids these days.
Hey, they get the job done without them. So,
well,
but I was just saying too that to me the difference between a brush and a brush pen, though I like brush pens are convenient. That's the strongest selling point. But is the difference between a car and a sports car and the Winsor Newton Series 7 Sable brush or whatever comparable Sable brushes are sports cars. Good evening, Comic Ray. I talked to ones who, plenty of people just use microns now or whatever. It's a completely different world. Some ink their books completely digital, like Chris. Did you get your inking finished? Oh, he's walking out on us. Nice art haul today. Glad you liked the art haul. I have fun making them. I get excited to show. I made an art haul video today since I got a box of art supplies I bought from Jerry's Artorama. So I always have a good time showing off my art supplies. Here's a question for you, Chris.
Yeah.
This has always amazed me about artists, like professional artists like Walter Simonson and lots of other people do like their sketches and stuff on typewriter paper or printer paper or something like that. And I use like drawing paper or Bristol for almost everything. I like never draw. Like to me, drawing on printer paper is just making the job harder. And I'm like, and I'm always saying, I'm like, what? And like I've talked to Walter and other people about this guy. That's just my habit. That's what I kind of always did. And I'm like, I don't get it. You know, a pad of scrap Bristol isn't that expensive, especially for these successful guys.
What is your question?
Do you use what paper do you draw? Like if you were just drawing a sketch. Now that all these L's are here,
I have a sketchbook.
You got it. Okay, so you got a sketchbook. So you will use drawing paper.
It's better than typing paper, but it's not Bristol
either.
Yep.
It's not, but you're right. I do stuff in drawing pads.
Yeah. So. Yeah, there's nothing finished or.
Right. It's just sketches.
Yeah.
But still, it's not inkjet paper.
It's like a sketch you're trying to sell, like a convention sketch or something.
Right.
Hang on just a second.
He's got to sell a convention sketch in the other room. It's true. The Bristol just feels so much better and easier to draw on. Even when I'm just like, you know, I got little scrap pieces of Bristol I use all the time. These are I draw. This is Bristol, but it's baseball card size, and this is like one size. This is I get my 11 by 17, 14 by 17 Bristol pad, which I cut down to 11 by 17. And then I get I get 3 baseball card size pieces out of it for art cards, and 1 shorter than a baseball card size that I use for scrap paper all the time. This is what I write my notes and things on.
Hey, since you do those on baseball card size paper, you can laminate them, the baseball cards with your notes on them.
Yeah, I've got a laminator too. I actually make my business cards that I hand out, which really aren't business cards. It's just if somebody needs to know my website and stuff. I make them baseball card size. I print them up on my printer on both sides. I laminate them and then cut them up. Yeah, let me show you. On one side is a piece of my artwork, and on the other side is radiantcomics.com. So these are all laminated, but I print them on my printer. So that's what I do for those. And I finally figured something out about my printer that I'd never seen before. I don't know if when I print something on because like I'm always trying to line things up if I'm printing on both sides, like those cards. So you got to get them to line up properly, and I got to shift things around the digital files. It turns out in the page setup on my printer, there's a little section that says margins, and down below margins, it by default is set to shift things over 0.2%, 0.2 of an inch, 0.2 of an inch. And I'm like, no wonder I can't get things to line up. You hit center on the paper, and then it shifts things over 1/5 of an inch for no reason.
Is that in preferences?
That's in your printer preferences in your page setup. And I'm like, where did that come from? Because I couldn't get stuff I'd print up front and I'd flip it over and print on the back.
I just figured trying to enter anything on a home printer was a lost cause. It could never be solved.
That I solved it by turning that freaking thing off. You hit center and it works. I'm just like, wow. I have a page layout by John Buscema that's on a large size piece of extremely paper. He may have been using a printer. something like that. When I started selling stuff professionally a few years back, I was too paranoid to use scrap and copy paper for stuff because I was worried yellow and change unknowingly years later. Yeah, that's another thing.
That's what I was saying before I had to go take that call. Was if I'm doing if it's a convention sketch or something I'm going to sell, I'll do it on like a cardstock, thicker paper.
An archival paper?
I don't know if it's archival, but it's thick and you can draw and erase that kind of thing.
It's not Bristol then? What kind of cardstock do you use? Oh, so you're actually using a printer paper cardstock.
This is a Hammer Mill cardstock. This was recommended to me by Randy Green.
Okay.
Before I was using a cardstock I got at Staples. It's just cardstock paper, and that worked pretty well. And then I tried to get a batch of cardstock from Office Max, and it was terrible.
Ah.
Now I got this Randy suggestion.
Okay. And is that plain paper cardstock?
It's
not inkjet paper.
It's premium color copy paper.
Okay, so it's not. Yeah, there's no coating on it for inkjet. That's what I mean.
No. It just
that'd be harder to draw on if it was coated.
Makes your work look better.
Mm-hmm. Brightness.
Advertising
I just
copy.
go on Bristol all the time.
I like that because it's 8.5 by 11, and we live in an 8.5 by 11 world.
I just cut everything down, so it's my paper cutter.
Once in a while, people might ask me like, "Can I get a 9 by 11, 9 by 12?" And I go, "No."
Don't have that paper size. I actually, you of course remember the scrap we used to get at Marvel.
I still have a stack of it. I got a stack right here.
You still have a stack? I've used all mine. Yes. I had 1,000. Yeah, there we go. That paper is from. It's 5.5 by 11. And it used to come from when Marvel has their blue line paper printed up. I think it gets printed on sheets that are like 22 by 30.
5.5 by 11.5.
5.5 by 11.5. The sheets were like 22 by 30, and they could get like, I think, 3 sheets of Marvel blue line paper printed on it. With that would be the leftover from the big sheet of paper that they printed the 11 by 17 sheets of paper on. And so Strathmore, who made the paper, would also ship the scraps, those 5.5 by 11.5 sheets of paper, to Marvel. So there was always stacks. In the 90s, there were stacks of them everywhere. And we used to use, I used it up until like 2008 or something. Mine finally ran out. And everybody, because it's great paper. It's the same Bristol that Marvel Comics are. It's just, 5.5 by 11. So everybody would use that for scraps and little drawings.
I used to do the mini Marvels on that.
You used to do your mini Marvels on it.
3-4 panel strip. Fits perfect.
I don't know why we stopped getting those, but I suspect it was Ike. He probably found out he could save $3 by not having him ship the extra scrap Bristol to Marvel.
Yeah.
I never heard why, because sometime in the late 90s we stopped getting that scrap Bristol. They stopped printing paper. So I was always like, what happened to that? One of my local comic shop gives away old backing boards. Was debating using the still white new looking ones for art stuff because they haven't yellowed. Yet they seem so. Yeah, I don't think the backing boards yellow as much as the comics yellow the backing board. But I've known plenty of people to draw on backing boards.
They're horrible to draw on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just very difficult. the difficult surface to draw on.
Because one side is coated and one side is uncoated.
Yeah.
Right?
So the coated side's impossible, and then the other side is just like so rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about with the ballpoint pen?
If you're good with a ballpoint pen, you can do it. I mean, this is my experience, but I know people that can draw very well with ballpoint pens, so I think that would take that pretty well.
Yeah. Ballpoint pen isn't archival though. When I see those beautiful drawings that Frank Cho has been doing in ballpoint pen, I'm like, oh man. Have you ever seen those? I think last year he posted a lot of them. I think he made a book out of them too. Just because when you draw with a ballpoint pen, people who can draw with it really well, it's kind of like drawing with a pencil. Because they can do gradations with it. They can go from dark to light with a ballpoint pen really easily. But it's not. Ballpoint pen fades away.
And I imagine that you need to see in your mind exactly what you're going to draw because you can't afford to make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, that's not quite true. Because with a ballpoint pen, when you're doing shading, you're making 100 lines to do the shading. And things that are complex that use 100 lines are often easier than things that use one line. Because when you use 100 lines, you can hide your mistakes. When you use one line, there's no hiding it. So that's why sometimes a technique that looks more sophisticated really isn't. Like especially a pointillist technique where somebody does stippling. That's kind of known as the an amateur technique, and students always fall in love with it. You know, when you're 19, you fall in love with stippling because you can make some sort of really elaborate shade. It takes a long time, so you feel like you're doing something. You can do do elaborate kind of shading with it, but since you're making 1,000 little dots, you can make mistakes with lots of those little dots and they get covered up by other little dots. So it's easy to fix your mistakes when you're stippling. So when someone sees it, they're like, wow, that's a lot of work. And it's not necessarily, it takes a lot of time, but it's not necessarily a lot of work because the stuff you don't have to figure out until you're doing it kind of thing. That being said, Frank Cho is a lot better drawing with a ballpoint pen than your average person. I don't expect to pick up a ballpoint pen and be able to do what Frank Cho does because he's really, really good.
Greg
My
likes
favorite thing is monsters. What was that done in? Ballpoint pen? I think I've seen that book. Yeah, you're right. I've seen the digital version of it. That might have been, I think I remember that being in ball. Did Marvel have a warehouse that stored all their supplies back in their prime? Like, they didn't have a warehouse, they had a storeroom. They had the endless supply closet. Though they did have a warehouse that housed all their printing stuff and plates. But yeah, they had a supply closet that had all their supplies. Chris wasn't there for the days of the endless supply closet.
Well, I mean, there was a supply closet when I started.
There was, but it was a lot. There weren't as many supplies in it, and they weren't as freely given out.
Well, that's what Chris said. There was a supply closet.
Because during the moon boom times in the early 90s, Marvel was like any other corporation. They had a budget for art supplies. And if you come in under, but let's just say their budget for art supplies was $5,000. If they only spend $4,000 this quarter, then they only get $4,000 next quarter. So the head of the department would spend the whole budget. That way they get the whole budget next semester too, next quarter too, semester. So they were kind of, oh, you need some brushes here. Oh, you need some pen tips? If any artist or anybody could go into the supply closet and get stuff because they had to use it. It was their budget.
Mhm.
I still enjoy lots of stippling, even though I understand. Yeah, stippling is not necessarily bad. It's just usually sort of an amateur thing. People grow out of stippling. Usually. Drew Friedman never quite. Well, he kind of did, but he's the cartoonist who did the most stippling. Yeah, it's all beautiful ballpoint pen by Emil Ferrer. Yeah, I think I looked. It really wasn't a comic. It was like more like an illustrated story. I remember. I think I took that out digitally from Hoopla, and I remember going through it pretty quickly. Another day, another box of stolen pins.
Mhm.
So, what are you working on tonight, Chris? Have you gotten to the color part?
Yeah, coloring.
All right, golf clap for finishing that inking.
Yeah.
How many pages of coloring now?
236.
Little chunks, little chunks.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Here's a technical artist thing I have to ask Chris if he understands this at all.
Oh no.
I've run into this I was just setting up some pages for Bad Idea. And this isn't the first time I've run into this, and I don't understand it at all. When you set up a comic book page to be drawn, there's the copy safe area. That's where all your lettering goes. Then there's the trim area, at the edge of which flat colors or modeling, Sleepy Reader asks Chris.
What?
Flat colors or modeling with your color?
There's a little bit of that's hard to answer because I'm not sure what that means.
It means, are you going to put some modeling in it, or is
I'm
he going with all cut color, as Michael Golden always called it?
Okay, so yeah, cut color, but that includes highlights and shadow.
Okay.
Which might, like, to somebody else that might mean, yeah, there is modeling. That is modeling.
But it's all cut color modeling.
Color, because I do it with flat. I don't really use any kind of airbrushing or gradients.
Okay. So be flat color, but cut color modeling. That's what Michael Golden called it. I never heard that term before, but it's when you've got flat color, and if you want to do an area of shade, there's no gradation of it. It's just it just goes from light blue to dark blue. You know, the dark blue is like there's just a line there. There's no modeling. Cut color. But anyway, you got the trim line, and that's where the paper cuts. Now, the printer insists, because he's got to cut the paper, that you bring the artwork all the way over to what's called the bleed line, the edge of the paper, so that when the printer trims it, there's art to cut off so that the art doesn't suddenly stop at the edge of the comic book page. That's normal. If you want something to bleed off the edge of the paper, you draw all the way to the bleed line. You don't draw to the trim line and stop. This guy who was just doing this comic, and I've seen it before, and Bad Idea, they draw right to the trim line and stop. Cool answer, thanks. I appreciate your cut color. And I'm like, what's going on? Because this happened to us once before, and the printer like bounced back the PDF and said there's not enough bleed on these pages. And like Tim had to explain to him that that's how the artist wants it. And I'm like, why would an artist want it like that? And this actually, that one also, the artist was putting the panel border right on the trim line.
This is the sort of stuff
I don't get it.
Like, this is the sort of stuff I learned from you and Stick would explain all this. And you're very good at explaining things. And it made sense to me instantly. I got it. Okay, I understand. But moving forward, like my experiences show me, most people don't understand it. I think I don't know why.
Yeah, because he even had like he had these pages set up digitally, sized with even the guidelines in there, drawn right with. I'm like, he couldn't draw that extra eighth of an inch.
Yeah, see, in his head, he's like, no, I did it the right way. See, I stopped.
Okay.
In his mind, yeah, trim. Trim says to me, that's where you stop.
Okay, I see.
So many people are wired that way that they legit don't understand what's happening.
He just doesn't know. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. He just doesn't know. Let's see, the first comic I got this week. I got 5 comics this week. The first one is the very last issue of Kaiju Max ever. It's season 6, issue 6. So after 6 seasons and 36 issues, the series is over. And I have to say, this 6th series, I didn't follow as easily as the other ones. I think because I'm going to have to sit down and read all 6 of them at once. I think because in this, it's like I never read season 1, but I read seasons 2 through 5. And kind of each one had its own plot line with sort of different characters, and sometimes they'd overlap. I think this season 6 had more characters in it. And I didn't always follow who was who of the giant monsters. And they kept switching between plot lines more than they did. Because in this one, the plot line was Kaiju Max is a prison for giant monsters. Have you ever read this, Chris?
No.
How about you, Paulo?
Nope.
Really good series if you can get your hands on it. And this one was about it's giant monsters in kaiju in prison, hence Kaiju Max. And in this one, they were let out of prison on sort of a work release to help fight off an alien invasion. Mostly they were digging ditches and stuff. So there was the stories of like these 3 or 4 different Kaiju Max and what they're up to and what they're thinking and what's going on, and some of the guards and giant robot suits. So there's just a lot more characters. And in this one, kind of all the characters stories kind of ended. And I was like, I've kind of lost the thread of it. Yeah. I had trouble. Sleepy Reader also had trouble following too many threads, even though I read season 1. Yeah, I don't even think not reading season 1 is the reason I'm having trouble with season 6. He says, all artists need a class from production person, preferably Jared. Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing is though, like you could take that class 100 times and they're still not going to understand it.
You just got to remember certain things. But there's the Kaiju Max. I'm sad to see it go because it's been a good series from beginning to end. Like I said, I'm going to sit down one of these days and read the whole thing. I'll probably understand it better. I'll be able to follow the threads. Like there's at least 6 different giant monsters, maybe 3 different stories going on. A couple of the earlier issues where they had even different stories were kind of easier to follow. I think they had, but it was a very cool series. All 6 are probably out in trade paperback now, all 6 seasons, and you can read any kind of season by itself. They're all sort of separate. So it's definitely fun to pick that one up. And it's giant monsters. I have a question for this week. I was talking to Scott Koblish this week, who's got a book in my pile. And we were talking about comics in general. And I realized I hadn't really thought about it before, but in the US, there's 3 distinct comic reading groups. And I was wondering if they ever crossed over. And Scott said they cross over at conventions. I was like, that must be the only place. And the 3 groups would be the comic shop guys. me, Chris, whoever, we grew up maybe reading superhero comics. We go to the comic shop to get our comics. The second group is the manga people. They get their books from bookstores, manga books. And the third group is the young adult readers who get their books from Amazon, Scholastic book fairs, whatever. And I was just sitting here. I just have no idea about this. If they ever cross it, do like young adult comic readers ever start reading manga, or do they ever start reading superheroes, or comic shop stuff? Do they ever cross, besides a convention, which they all go to? Does anyone ever get out of their lane? Like, I read manga occasionally, but I never go to bookstores and buy it.
I think there's a lot of crossover with American superhero and manga.
Yeah.
Okay. I would imagine it's easier to go from young readers' comics to manga, but not to superheroes.
Mm-hmm. And do those manga bookstore people, you think, go to comic shops eventually to get, or do they buy what's in the bookstore? You think? I have no idea.
Don't know.
I was just confident because
I'm just remembering.
I don't know anyone who started reading manga first.
Oh, so you're saying if did they start with manga and go to American stuff?
Yeah. Do they ever do that?
No idea. I know that a lot of us in the bullpen were reading Dragon Ball Z.
Right. I know there's like I said, I think comic shop guys occasionally read manga. But the people who were buying all those manga issues in the 2000s and the 2000s, who would buy them from the bookstore mostly, because if you go to bookstores, the manga section is bigger than the trade paperback American section. So that's obviously where people go mostly for their manga. And I wonder if those people ever go to the bookstore. Like my nephew, who's 18 now, he read young adult stuff when he was, stuff he got through either Amazon or Scholastic book fairs, like the Captain Underpants stuff and whatever other young adult stuff was popular. He read that, but he doesn't read comics or manga. I think YA readers end up in manga. They might. I just don't know. I would think they'd have an easier time ending up in manga because all that stuff comes from the same bookstore and not comic shops. But that was just the thought that came into my head this week, because there's nobody I watch on YouTube who started reading manga and then moved into comic shop stuff. I've seen people who, read comic shop stuff, like J-Rock has been reviewing manga now for a few months. So I know it goes the other way. Sometimes, at least.
I think kids who read manga are not interested in becoming Wednesday warriors.
Yeah.
And they're not interested in picking up a new issue every month of the comic they like.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. It's just weird. I wonder why. Is it just not? It could just be it's not their habit.
Yeah, I would say compared to what we have in Europe, that a new Asterix only comes up once every 3 years.
Right.
So that doesn't mean you don't buy other comics.
Right.
It's just that you don't go back because the next Asterix is there. You wait until it gets done. So you might want to try something different. So if your favorite manga series doesn't have anything for another 4 to 6 months, you'll try something else. But it has to be something that you can read until you're waiting for the next series.
Right.
Not how American publishers put out their comics.
Mm-hmm. They would only get.
Hello. There he goes. Yeah. His signal was terrible.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was just me, but yeah.
I don't know why it kicks me out when I go to show a comic. That's the only time. When I move over to show a comic, it kicks me out on occasion. It hasn't done it in a few weeks. One of my comic shops has a busy, diverse demographic, and I regularly see kids going for Pokemon cards and leave with comics and other anime. Older folks pick up. Oh, okay. That's I don't think that's your average comic shop, but that's cool. Like I said, I imagine if the comic shop, like my comic shop, doesn't sell cards, so there's never going to be kids wandering in there to buy Pokemon cards. But this is my comic shop owner. Also, this is he's sort of a hobby comic shop owner. He's got a full-time job, works remotely. He even has before COVID, doing coding. So I think, it's a different sort of thing. Like, wonder if I went to the Wizard comic shop, it would be different because they got a lot of crap. My comic shop can't keep the manga on the shelf, but it doesn't seem like his manga customers transform into image readers. Ah, interesting. Yeah. Paulo is large and in charge.
Well, you slipped out for a moment.
I did.
Yeah, your image quality is terrible.
My image quality went down?
Yeah, no, you're always pixelated and your sound cuts out.
That's weird. Let me try leaving and entering because it looks good on my little thumbnail here, so might be on your side too. Let me leave the studio and come back.
There he goes again, and try to get back in. Because one thing with American comics that the superhero people dominated the way that comics are published for so long that it's actually bad for the U.S. industry.
Mm-hmm. Saga certainly shows that. In terms of it's sold 11 million copies worldwide. The U.S. comics industry can do with a lot more sagas. And it may have had them if it wasn't for the domination of the superhero industry.
Yeah, I haven't seen numbers in a while, but the best-selling American comic in France in 2015 was The Walking Dead. It was published as graphic novels, but each one of them was 100K in France, while the best-selling Marvel magazine was 60, and the second, which was Ultimate Spider-Man featuring Miles Morales, and the second best-selling Marvel magazine was 15K.
Wow.
So yeah, and none of them. But of course, Disney outsells the Marvel on the newsstand by a lot. But when it comes to novels, Marvel was doing a terrible job. Panini, who has Marvel, they were doing a terrible job with Marvel, and even DC, who by that time they were working with Dargo, with their Urban Comics line, they were selling better with the graphic novels. Suicide Squad was selling well a few years ago. The new Suicide Squad, because now you gotta have Harley Quinn on the comic, but the way that American comics sell in France, which of course has their own industry, it's always been a niche.
Sleepy Reader says Chris has the clearest picture, which is funny. In my three little pictures here, Chris is the least clear. But I was actually having upload problems I was uploading some files before, so there may be something wrong with my upload speed. My download speed was fine, but my upload speed was not. And on Wednesday, it took about 3 hours to upload my video, which normally takes 20 minutes. I was like, that's not good. And then I was having trouble uploading things to Dropbox. and tested my upload speed, and it was like 20 megabytes a second. I'm like, I think that's right. I'll have to reset my router sometime. I have 2 well-established shops. Big one is clean and bright, and everyone of all ages. And as your typical downtown dark club rundown with only guys our age. Yeah, mine is well, it's not quite run down, but it's only guys our age. Well, like I said, I imagine also that I haven't been to in a decade. Wizard World shop that Wizarding started in the 80s. And that one was always kind of big and full of young people. But like I said, I've been there in a decade, so I don't know if it still is. In fact, I don't know. I think it moved a couple of times. How's your comic shop down there in North Carolina, Chris?
We got 4.
4?
We got 4 comic shops in Greensboro.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of comic shops.
It is.
Which one's your favorite?
I can't say.
Oh, you like them all.
They're all wonderful.
They all carry Chris Geruso comics, and they're all wonderful.
I can't believe how much I like all of them equally.
It's something else. Visited my shop on a Saturday last week, and it was completely different clientele than on a Wednesday. Young women and parents with kids. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a comic to read, you don't go to the shop every week or every month. And
Right.
So you go on a Saturday, which is when you have time. You don't go on a Wednesday just because it's the new comics.
Well, I went on Saturdays for years to pick up my new comics because I wasn't home during the week. So,
Yeah,
but they had pull lists, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, but after you could go on Saturdays until the mid '90s, and there wouldn't be a problem. You could pick up comics off the shelf.
Right.
After the market crash, a lot of shops only started having comics for pull lists.
It was always like that for indie comics, so I always had to make sure I had stuff on my pull list. So
sure.
Well, I could go, and it was no big deal if I went on a Saturday because I was buying indie stuff off my pull list, so I could be a Wednesday warrior on Saturday, no problem. But if I was looking to pick the latest hot Batman or Spider-Man book up off the shelf, I could have been in trouble. Could have been in trouble. I bought a digital comic this week. I showed this one a couple of weeks ago since I reread it. It's A Good Life If You Don't Weaken, one of my favorite graphic novels by Seth. Just about a few hours ago, I decided to buy the digital version of it for $11 on Amazon. Just to have the digital. I actually have a bootleg digital copy that is someone who scanned in this book. And, scanning in a book, you get sometimes there's a shadow on this side of the page. And I was like, you know what? I want to, this is my favorite. I want a legit digital copy of it. And I just got a $2 credit. So the $13 book was $11. So I was like, all right, I'll spend $11 on it. So now and what's cool is when it also has the guided view on it. That's where it shows you each panel, which I generally don't like reading comics that way. I like to see the whole page. But with this, I was actually a little excited. I'm like, oh, I'm going to read it on guided view because that's just a new way to read this graphic novel I've read many times. Chris was not impressed with this one, by the way.
What?
Paulo was right. If I don't go on Wednesday, a lot is sold out. Yeah.
What wasn't I
Jared,
impressed?
didn't you still have big comic shops? That's a few floors full of stuff. They still have Midtown Comics is still there. Yeah, that could be it. And Jim Hanley's Universe is still there, plus other various comic shops. Those are the two big ones. And in the 90s, I think I loaned you this to read, and you weren't too fond of it. It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken by Seth.
What
One of
happens?
my favorites.
What happens in it?
It's a sort of fictional autobiography.
Wait, is this the one where it's like the guy gets obsessed with a cartoonist?
Yes.
And he goes back down. What do you?
Yes.
I didn't have a problem with that. What are you talking about? I wasn't
I
impressed.
didn't say you had a problem with it. It just didn't love it. I love it.
I thought it was good. I thought it was good.
I'm remembering wrong. Chris thought it was good.
You're trying to.
I enjoyed it. It's one I reread all the time, once a year or so.
And then he finally finds all that guy's stuff, and it's like the guy did like a dozen cartoons in his career.
Yes. And I was just looking at something. I think it was Details magazine. I have to find it. Ran an article saying that Seth was committing a hoax because the cartoonist was made up. There is no cartoonist named Kalo who really existed, who did, it was a fictional cartoonist he was looking up. And people got upset when they found that out. And I have to find which Detail magazine, because I just saw an article mentioning it when I was looking that up this week. That Details magazine, Seth perpetrating a hoax on the comic buying public. I was like, what?
I was under the impression that he made the guy up.
He made the guy up.
Yeah.
I may have even told you that when I gave you the book, because I didn't know that when I first read it.
Maybe that's why I knew.
Yeah. And I remember I was a little disappointed finding out the guy wasn't real, but it didn't bother me that much. But it's like, I really want like an oversized version of this too. Like, because it was originally comic size, and this is 6x9 manga size. So I was like, I wonder if I can print out my digital book, my digital comic. Like, oh man, that's so much work. I don't need it that badly. I can look at them big on the guided view. Have you ever read stuff on the guided view, Paulo?
Okay, I don't know what the guided view is.
The guided view is when you're reading a comic digitally and you double click on the panel, it blows up the panel to the size of the iPad screen.
Oh god, that's ridiculous. Yeah, no.
So you're looking at it panel by panel.
That doesn't make any sense.
Some people really like it. I generally don't.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. That's why there's page composition.
Yeah, you lose all the page composition, and some people like it.
Looking at it, if you're reading it on your phone or something, then
yeah, if you're reading on your phone, I can see that.
You have to maximize.
Yeah, you have to blow it up if you're reading it on your phone. But some people really like who is it? Larasa does the show with Sleepy and Terrence. She really likes reading like Silver Age comics that way because she can really see the art. So she just likes to see I mean, she likes reading them regularly too as comics. But she always said she really enjoys seeing the old Jack Kirby 1960s art blown up to the size of the iPad. I thought, that's kind of interesting.
Well, if they have a traditional six panel layout,
yeah,
you don't lose as much.
Right.
But when they started going crazy with the layouts, especially Neil Adams.
Oh yeah,
I mean, how the hell are you going to read a Neil Adams page?
I don't know how they
do
guided view on that. Huh. Jared and Chris, do you have any preference between being called a cartoonist and a comic book artist? No. I use them interchangeably mostly.
I don't have a preference.
A drawer. Do you like being called a drawer?
Like I know most people are not going to understand anyway. I just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I think the generation before us didn't like to be called cartoonists if they were drawing superheroes. When I read comics out loud to my daughter, panel by panel, keeps us focused. Helps keep us focused. Yeah, I can understand that. I can. That way, you're looking at the same picture. Otherwise, you could be looking at one panel, and she could be 3 panels away.
So Greg would say the definition of a cartoonist is someone that does the whole thing themselves.
I often use it that way too.
So if I'm drawing somebody else's story, I'm not really a cartoonist here. I'm just an illustrator.
Like there's a better chance I refer to Terry Moore as a cartoonist than Sean Phillips. Yeah, I think I'd do that too. Now that I think of it.
But that definition, while I appreciate it, most people are not going to know that. Even people who read comics or work in comics know that specific version of the definition. So it's useless.
Yeah.
Unless I'm talking to Chris, it's no good.
And even considering syndicated comic strips back in the 1920s, by that definition, none of them would be cartoonists, because even then there was a division. There would have been a division between people writing and drawing.
Assistants.
Yeah,
they all had assistants.
Sure. So yeah,
like Will Eisner wouldn't be a cartoonist because he had so many assistants. Even though I'd call Will Eisner a cartoon. Like, they're not hard and fast rules; they're just general ones.
Well, yeah, and it's also if you have to have this conversation every time you talk about it.
Yeah.
The 90s Tit Goblin, the 90s kid in me finally picked up a true believer of Agent Venom story today. I based my selection on rad costume look and was surprised it was an okay character and story. Any other Agent Venom fans? Is that the one where Flash Thompson is Agent Venom? I read a couple issues of that about 10 years ago, and they were all right. And I don't remember why I ended up reading them, but I did. Yeah, not bad. Agent Venom.
I liked Agent Venom in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
Some people didn't, because they retcon, and I think it was Bendis' idea, so that's why they don't like it. They retcon the planet of the symbiotes into being some sort of hippie paradise.
Right. Sleepy Reader says illustrator seems to undercut the role of the artist, in my view. In comics, yes, I would say, because it people don't understand when it comes to comics that the drawing is part of the writing. People always say, that they always kind of separate the writer and the art, and especially if you call somebody an illustrator, not the penciler or the artist or something. The illustrator makes it sound, because the difference between sort of an illustrator and an artist in general is that illustrators are commercial artists, and 99% of the time, they're drawing somebody else's, unless you're that top echelon of illustrator, you're drawing somebody else's idea, somebody else's view. If you're drawing an ad for Ford cars, you have to draw Ford cars. And you have to draw what the art director says, I want these Ford cars doing this thing. And they're not your ideas, you just execute them. And that's not true of comic book artists. Comic book artists make a lot of decisions in the drawing, in the layout, in the storytelling that we would consider writing, just not in words. So that's why it's crazy nowadays that the artists are so unknown and are thought of as just a pair of hands at times. Did you see who said it? Well, I'm trying to remember what book it was. Recently I saw on Twitter a comic book artist say something about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar gave a good review, because he's a columnist, to a comic book. And in the entire review of the comic book, he never mentioned the artist's name. And I actually don't even think the artist, whose name I can't remember, but I follow him on Twitter, I don't even think he mentioned Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's name. He just said I found that out later. But he was like, you know what? He's like, I loved the positive review, but how do you write a whole review of the comic book I drew and not mention my name? Because he, of course, mentioned the writer's name. And somebody else pointed out, well, you know, not everybody has like the vocabulary to be reviewing comic books, to be talking about art. That's it. And Tony said, hey, if you don't know how to talk about art, why are you reviewing comic books?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Boy, I wish I could remember what book that was. It was a big artist too. No one small. About the only thing I could get into Marvel-wise was Iron Man, FF, Planet, and Worldwide Hulk. Okay, I remember Planet Hulk was good. That was one of the things like 15 years ago now. I've always been a big DC, Valiant, and Image guy in the 90s and 2000s. See, I was a Marvel kid, but after like 1985, I was almost all indie. Comic book artists seem like director, actor, and cinematographer in one to steal a movie. Yeah, they make a lot of decisions. That I think was it Brian Hitch? What was the comic? Hitch with Ellis. Oh, that's right. It was Brian Hitch and Warren Ellis's Batman.
Oh, you have to be very out of it not to understand how Brian Hitch works as part of the storytelling. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
How do you review a comic and not mention Brian Hitch's name? That's what it was. It was the Batman's Grave. Ellis and Hitch. I read 1 or 2 issues of that, but I haven't gone back to it yet. I mean, it was nice that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar gave it a good review and maybe get more eyes on it.
Yeah, but you know, you don't have the I'm not even sure if it's you don't have that you don't have the vocabulary. Yeah, you really. I mean, when I was 8 or 9, I could tell that I liked John Byrne and George Perez better than most other artists at the time.
Even if you don't have the vocabulary, you can say, I really liked this part.
Yeah.
I really liked this was a really cool drawing on this page.
Well, that's not what they're reacting to.
No.
But it has to be. It's indissociable to me.
To some people, especially mainstream Marvel and DC people, the plot is the only thing. What happens next is the only thing. That
grew up in a time when everybody agreed comic books were stupid and dumb, and they're not to be taken seriously. So now, you know, and that's we've lived through that whole struggle all our lives, right? It's just the idea that like people judge you because you read comic books; they're so dumb, right? So everybody has this chip on their shoulder now, and I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he reads something and he's like, wow, that was like actually better than expected. And he's keying in on the fact that the stories are way more mature than he would have expected from a dumb comic book. Thinks about is this the narrative, the story, like what he's reading.
Okay.
Completely disregarding the artwork.
I see what you mean.
What's important is how serious and mature it is.
Interesting. I'm going to track down that review too. I haven't actually read it.
So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is reviewing a comic in 1982.
Well, I mean, he's from that era, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that it would ask him. Oh, how old is he? 70?
Yeah, he's not a young man anymore. That's for sure. I don't even know.
And if this, like, I don't know if he even heard about Brian Hitch complaining about it, but I would imagine Kareem Abdul-Jabbar probably be embarrassed to realize, oh my God, that's right, I didn't and I should have.
Yeah,
that'd probably be his reaction.
I imagine so. Like Brian Hitch wasn't calling him out or anything because he loved that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar reviewed it, but he's just disappointed that a whole review didn't mention his name. Friar Tuck says, unless the art was horrible or weird back when I was buying them off the rack, I wasn't aware of a lot of the artists. I became aware of the artists when I was 9 or 10. That's when I started following artists. But I'm told that happened for me, or Craig Shiegel told me that happened for you younger than most comic fans. So I'm not sure. How old were you when you started noticing the artists, Friar Tuck? Like Paulo, I quickly noticed as a kid how specific artists always made comics read better. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that I was an art spotter because I never was, and even today I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
There are many cases where if there's if it's especially if it's an old school comic where they didn't bother crediting the artist, I wouldn't know how to recognize it. But there are guys with that specific style that and you can tell. And even at 7 or 8, I could tell John Byrne, I could tell George Perez, and I could tell I like these guys.
Right.
There were others that were sort of there, and the first time I saw Jack Kirby, I was like 6 or 7, and I didn't get it.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to get it.
When I was 9 going on 10, that's when I first started really paying attention to comics and collecting them. And that was with Hulk 200 that Sal Buscema drew. And then like 203, Herb Trimpe drew. And it looked so different that I was like, my 9-year-old brain was trying to figure out why the Hulk looked so different. And that's when I discovered credit boxes. I was like, oh, that's why he looked so different. A different guy drew him. Look at that. And and after that, I always paid attention to the credit boxes.
Yeah. And the way that the Brazilians published, they did some jumps in continuity, but I could even tell there were John Byrne's first run on the Fantastic Four, still inked by Sennett, was completely different from his run where he wrote and drew the comic, and I could tell that even certain inkers did a different job. Like the first, when Dave Cockrum had taken over again, John Byrne left, and there were a few issues with Brent Anderson. I remember there was one with Bob McLeod that it was not badly drawn, but it was not the style that you're used to on the X-Men. And then Bob McLeod did only 2 issues. And then Cockrum came back, and I remember there was a slight but noticeable difference in styles between one issue inked by Joe Rubinstein and another one inked by Bob Wyacek.
Okay.
And I was 8 or 9. I could tell. I didn't have the vocabulary, but I could tell. It's because Cockrum has a style that you can recognize. So when the inker finishes the finishes, I could tell this does not look exactly the same.
Yeah. He's known for Sky. I don't know if this is the first comic Kareem reviewed or what. And I know he's got a column in something, but I've never heard of him reviewing comics before. Maybe this is new for him. Did he write his own comic a while? I don't remember. I have no memory of him being involved with comics at all. So I don't. Anyone know what criteria Marvel uses to make something into a true believer? Popular movie coming out with a character, high sales for the original print run. I've noticed this coincides with movies. They haven't done a lot of true believers since COVID, probably because the movie. But I've been noticed when there's a movie coming out, they do true believers of some of the characters that are in those movies. So I think that's what it is. I guess it's whatever theme they could convince the money guys to come out with.
Yeah, if there's no movie, they'll throw mud at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah. Well, Friar Tuck didn't notice an artist until he was in his 20s because he stopped buying comics at age 14. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's valid.
I knew about Kirby as a child because of my older brother, who was a huge Hulk fan. I was also buying those Fireside books in the late 70s as they came out. Origin of Marvel Comics, Son of Origins. So I loved those where I could learn about the old stuff.
Yeah. The way I get it, I saw they did special editions that were kind of modeled after the Fireside books for the 100th edition of Heróis da TV and Captain America. Captain America number 100 does not have any Captain America stories because they published the origin in number 77. But the Kirby, watching Kirby Ditko, and I was like, this looks old. I was 8, 9.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
this looks old. Yeah, and this is the first stories of the superheroes. So even Joe Sinnott was not inking Kirby. It was Frank Giacoia, Paul Reinman, not the best.
See, as soon as I turned 9, 10 and discovered artists do stuff in the Marvel, I liked old Horse, because I loved the history of it.
Yeah, but they were also publishing. Yeah, they were also publishing the Eternals, and the Eternals was completely different. That I liked.
Oh, Mycroft Volume 1, The Apocalypse Handbook, Kindle and Comixology by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Okay. I guess it's a Mycroft Holmes thing. I'm guessing because that's the only place I ever see the name Mycroft. Yo, Saul, how you doing tonight? Another book I got this week is the latest issue of Ice Cream Man with the infinity cover. Who doesn't love an infinity cover? Issue 29. And I'm not 100% sure how to describe this issue. Because often with Ice Cream Man, they're mostly done in ones. And a lot of them are they do a lot of sort of experimental storytelling in it and stuff. They come up with, like, one issue was it Dr. Seuss based. They come up with themes for all the issues, and they mostly work for me, not always. But this whole issue, I guess, was kind of a funeral. It was like a memorial to some random character, unless. And it just starts with a guy. It's real well done. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was very well done. But I'm like, I'm not sure if it passed me by, if it was based on something or not. But it's the story of a guy going to a funeral for a friend, and they go through the friend's life, and the guy's in this bar, and all of a sudden this fox shows up to lead him, and there's this whole. And we see his daughter and wife kind of go, they memorialize his whole life. And they're kind of also memorializing this guy who's going to his funeral. So it's like, and here's the Ice Cream Man himself running the memorial for the guy in the casket. And the guy who's dead describes he was suffering from anxiety. And it was like he had a squid in his chest. So at the funeral, the Ice Cream Man pulls a squid out of his chest to pass on to someone else. And at the end, we get a memorial page. I really enjoyed it. It was a well-done issue. I'm just not sure what it is. Like, was it because sometimes they do like homages to movies or stuff like that. Maybe it's just something I don't know. But there'll also be an Ice Cream Man oversized hardcover with the first 13 issues in it. 12 or 13. 12 issues in it. An oversized deluxe hardcover collecting issues 1 through 12 with a heaping scoop of extra. I might get that since I never bought the early issues. I just read them on Hoopla. But fun comic, Ice Cream Man. Even if I'm not quite sure what they're going for, they did it well. And there's a whole carnival theme going on for the guy who's still alive. I don't know. Maybe life is a carnival. I don't know. Life is a carnival because he's still alive, and it's a memorial for the guy who's dead. I'm going to have to ponder this a little more. And he gave the guy who's still alive, he gave him the anxiety squid in a bowl. Okay. think there's more going on here than I'm understanding. But I did like it a lot. It's an issue that hit for me. Have you guys ever read Ice Cream Man?
Yeah.
Nope.
It's not the type of thing that really attracts me. It's weird for weird's sake.
Oh, it's just weird. I don't even know if it's for weird's sake. It's just weird.
Yeah, and I don't think that the story. I read the first arc, and I didn't think that the story was actually going
There's not an
anywhere.
arc. They fooled you into thinking there's an arc. But there's not an arc, which is fine with me. It's like an old-fashioned comic book where each issue is done. There might be some arc going. And early on, there was hints of an arc, but they never. You're really gonna read this like it was Tales of the Crypt or something.
I suppose. I mean,
yeah. So I don't know why my video is super low res. I think my router is having upload problems this week. Don't think there's anything I can do about it right now, unfortunately. Hopefully you can hear me. As a kid in the late 80s, early 90s, I went looking for and following the Image artists before Image and popular British writers. So I was out of the gates aware and looking for makers credit. Okay. Yeah, I was pretty aware. Reboot? Yeah, I don't know if a reboot will do it. I could try. Only because, like I said, it's been uploaded. I could also... Let's try hardwiring. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment.
I was very late to the game in realizing who was drawing stuff. I was just as a kid, I was just reacting to the characters. That's all. So I was probably a teenager before I started to notice who was doing what. But in retrospect, I was definitely reacting to Walt Simonson before I realized who Walt Simonson was.
Yeah, my first contact with Walt Simonson, he had a short run in Thor during the 1970s, but his inker was Tony DeZuniga, and DeZuniga completely submerged Simonson's style. You have to look at the layouts to find him.
I've seen that, and I just kind of thought he hadn't really arrived at his like fully formed Walt Simonson self.
No, he hadn't. That's right. But yeah, you had to look at the layouts, at the layout of each panel to see the Simonson after. But you would only be able to tell after you would be aware of future Simonson.
Yeah.
I just hooked up to Ethernet, so I don't know if it got any better. Or am I still pixelated?
There are a few guys from that I remember from back in the day in the superheroes that they evolved in completely different styles. David Mazzucchelli is one, of course. Paul Smith in the 90s did not look like Paul Smith in the 80s. Who was the person that did Living Chance was Paul Smith, wasn't it? Yeah, Living Chance was Paul Smith. Right. So yeah. So there were a few guys that the style was, it moved into something that you wouldn't recognize if you look if you started with the new stuff and you went back to the old stuff, you wouldn't recognize it.
Mazzucchelli was an overwhelming inker, that's for sure.
But it's not an inker. It's really different. I mean, Paul Smith drawing for Marvel was not the same Paul as Paul Smith doing Leave It to Chance.
Right. He actually wanted Bob Wiacek to ink a specific way. So when Bob Wiacek was working over Paul Smith, he was I forget the way he talked to Paul Smith, and Paul Smith asked him to ink a specific way. So he did. I think young readers like art more than story, says Saul. Whereas adults, I believe, look for a more engrossing story. Could be. Like I said, I've always been kind of both. I like both. To me, what makes comics unique is that when you read a book, a prose book, it all takes place in your head. The words on the paper make images take place in your head.
Mm-hmm.
When you're watching a movie, you're watching the images that are on your head moves into the images that are on screen. You're not imagining anything. You're moving into the space of those images. When I'm reading a comic, the words and the pictures create this space in my brain that is not cool. It's like an in-between space where there's pictures there and there are words there, and my mind is kind of creating its own space for the words and pictures, and sometimes imagining stuff and sometimes not. So it's like my brain does a different thing when I'm reading comics, and I like that thing it does. I like that sort of, it's a world of imagination, but it's not like I said, when you're reading books, the words make images in your head. Comic books kind of do that, but you also have images right there that are guiding you. So it's like a different headspace than movies or books. And that's what I like about comics. And it's a tough headspace to describe because it's part visual. Like movies are almost all visual and audio, but you move into the world of the movie. It's like you leave yourself and go into the world of the movie. A book, you go into the world of the book, but the world of the book is mostly in your head. With comics, you're somewhere in between your head and the paper. You kind of move into the comic, but then into your head. So it's like a different experience. I'm biased, so I don't know the answer. This one seems like the early 90s was the only era that had rock star artists and comic shops at every corner, and some creators were housed. Yeah, well, that was the boom time. The artists were, there was a brief 5-6 year period where comic book artists were stars in the popular, small stars in the popular zeitgeist like they never were before.
Mm-hmm. It helped that there was a specialized press that could help promote it, because
Right.
of course the publishers American publishers never found out how to properly promote creators.
There's no place to promote comic books.
Yeah,
there's the problem. They can't afford television ads, radio ads. That's the whole budget of the comic, one ad.
But
that's the problem.
There are tricks to putting to put your product out there.
Oh yeah, there are.
It just seems
I'm
that
saying it's a really hard job.
It is. It is a meticulous job.
Yeah.
But the end result pays off.
People have done it well.
Yeah, it just seems that whoever they buy to do it in comic book publishers, either they don't know how to do it or they are not allowed to do what they want. Which I believe could be given the way that publishing and copyright ownership works in American comics is a way that I see being an issue. Not letting the marketing departments work what they actually have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the early 90s were certainly different. They, like I said, that was the black swan, the early 90s. That wasn't normal.
Mm-hmm. And even though people talk smack about Wizard, to me, Wizard was a big help in getting names out there.
And Wizard being on the magazine stands helped too. It was a magazine that people could pick up if they had a vague interest in comics. It's all the exciting stuff happening in it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't for me. I didn't need it, but other people, it was good stuff.
Yeah. Internationally, while I was reading it, I could tell that it was not those articles were not very fleshed out. And that was before I became a journalist. But for an international audience in a pre-internet era, it was the only way that we could be on top of what was happening in the United States.
Right. Tit Goblin lived for Wizard as an 11 years old. If I was an 11-year-old with Wizard out, I would have loved it. Paul Smith, Leave It to Chance. Wow, the covers look like Tintin style. Yeah, I enjoy Paul Smith's Leave It to Chance. I bought all the issues of it.
Yeah, I kind of see what you mean, which is funny because in the writer versus artist. Now, of course, Tintin was done. Hergé was a writer and artist, but no matter how much recognizable his style was, what really made Tintin was definitely the story.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had other series, and they never became as well known as Tintin. The good material was there,
but it's how the art is part of the story, kind of. That's what people don't always understand.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Sure,
and you can see that, especially in the 1970s, when it was in his 20-something album. By that time, of course, it was completely different from the stuff that he did in the 1930s and even in the 1950s. It was in the late 40s that he started developing what that Tintin coalesced into the recognizable style that it became, and allowed Hergé to start working on better stories, better themes, and doing different layouts. And it's that thing that guys who understand what it's like to be a cartoonist know how to do. Yeah. Even if you have a style that looks really simple to draw, you know how to use detail in a proper fashion, and you have that a certain subtlety of line on how you do things. And by the time we get to the 60s and 70s, Hergé already in his 50s, 60s, that was when he was at the top of his game. It's kind of funny to think that European artists get to the top of their game after that their 40s and 50s, but American artists kind of reach, a lot of American artists kind of plateau after they get out of their 20s.
I think that's because the way American comics made, where you have to be able to draw really fast, to get those monthly comics out, and even if you either like John Byrne, where you learn to pare down everything to the minimal amount you can do in order to keep going, or you get more complicated and leave comics because you can't draw what you're drawing really fast anymore. Like, Barry Windsor Smith did, or Neil Adams even. There's no place. Once you're past that young, cheap, and fast in Marvel and DC age, there's no place for you in comics anymore. At least traditionally there wasn't. I think that has something to do with it too. Friar Chuck really liked Comics Buyer's Guide as he got into his 30s. Me too. I think it was in my 30s when I started getting that. It was the late 90s I finally got a subscription. Up until it turned into a magazine. It turned itself into Wizard in the early 2000s or something, and I stopped reading it then.
It's just funny because Wizard died in the early 2000s.
Yeah. So did Comics Buyer's Guide.
Because of the internet. The kind of information that you get from Wizard by moving to the internet made Wizard irrelevant, which is comic book marketplace understood. That's why they stopped being a monthly magazine.
Right. If I could go back in time, I would have been all over Comics Journal. It seems like a great publication in the era of garbage kids Wizard stuff. I think Comics Journal was better in the 80s.
Yeah.
In the 90s, it came out less frequently and often was not as interesting. That's my memory of it. I don't really, I bought it in the 80s a lot more. I got tired of the really long interviews with people who were kind of dull.
Yeah, and there was definitely a point when Gary Groth was being purposefully obtuse.
Yeah.
He was anti-establishment for the sake of being anti-establishment, but not offering anything. And so yeah, he gets to interviewing people who are dull, just to say no, these aren't dull. These are different. No, they're boring.
He did the first comic story I ever got published. So. And he told me it was the strangest thing he'd ever seen. So I guess he liked it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked it. And it started dedicating more and more of its pages to comics it didn't like. I'd be like, oh, come on, I don't care that you don't like mainstream superhero comics. Talk about comics you like. I don't really need a 7-page breakdown on why the latest issue of Spider-Man was terrible.
Yeah, I guess Gary Groth decided that he was going to become the most important person in comics. But in order for your opinion to become important, you have to be able to connect to people.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that Gary Groth is good at, is at driving people away.
Kim Thompson, that's who did it with him, right?
Kim Thompson, Kim Thompson was the nice guy.
But did he? He's not there anymore, right? Kim Thompson. Is he still alive, or did he?
No, he died, and he wasn't that old. He wasn't that old.
Yeah, I have a vague memory of him dying, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, Kim Thompson. Yeah, he died in 2013. 2013 already?
Wow.
Oh, he was 56.
56. Wow. That is something. All us graybeards better watch out. Like I said, I'm entering the age, I'm 55, where, I or anybody I know can drop dead. That's just that age. It starts happening. Gary Groth is good at making wonderful hardbacks. He is.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. You have to be able to draw a line. And this guy is an asshole does not mean that this guy's stupid. And nobody could ever accuse Gary Groth of being stupid.
Tit Goblin wishes he was around when Raw was on the stands. I only bought a couple issues of Raw. It really didn't appeal to me. It was expensive. That was pretty much it. I mean, I didn't hate it or anything, but it wasn't really, I think it was more artsy than I was Raw. And I use that word in a little bit of a derogatory manner. By artsy, I mean they didn't always care how any individual piece of the story came across to their reader. They were looking at the magazine kind of as a whole. And me as a reader would read 8 pages of something. I didn't know what was going on. And then it was continued next year sometime. And I just never could get into it. But I liked Drawn and Quarterly in the 90s. It was one of my favorite magazines. That was a good. So I like that sort of stuff. I'm not sure why I didn't like Raw. Because I should, by all rights, have liked Raw. It also wasn't easy for me to find. It didn't show up in comic shops. And it came out mostly when I was in college and wasn't anywhere. If it wasn't on my pull list, I couldn't always find it because I wasn't going to the store. I was going to the store when I was home. And I'd pick up all my comics for that month. So I probably couldn't even see. There's probably a little bit of sour grapes to it, too, for me. Those grapes are out of reach, so they must be sour.
Mm-hmm.
Pissed he didn't save his copies of Raw.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 1. Yeah, I could see my comics in Raw in hindsight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At the time Raw was coming out, I was terrible.
Yeah. In France, I don't think I could have you would have been the type of material that would have worked for something like a Metal Hurlant for the French version of heavy metal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I could put you in Echo de Savane.
Okay.
Echo de Savane was the more alternative type, and they were open to actually alternative Americans.
Ah. Did anyone regularly pick up heavy metal? I wasn't allowed as a kid and felt weird trying to buy it alone.
Well, you should have lived in the same town as Gore Vidal, because they let him pick up the heavy metal at 10 years old.
I wasn't a fan of heavy metal when I was a kid. I just found the writing so thin. I picked up an issue here or there. The only time I collected heavy metal regularly, and I've since gotten rid of my issues, was in the 90s. A subscription to heavy metal was so cheap. I was like, why not get one? It was like $12 for a year's worth of heavy metal.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right.
Yeah.
It was like $1 or $2. I can't remember. It must have come out bi-monthly. So it was like $2 an issue or something. Maybe even been $6 or maybe $18 for 3 years. So I'm like, all right, $1 an issue, I'll subscribe. So that's when I actually read from like 94 to 98 or something. I read heavy metal.
Yeah, that wasn't a good period.
It was pretty. It was a lot of good European stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. It was all European stuff. It was the only way I was going to read any of that. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, because the 70s stuff, Dionnet and Druillet and Mobius, they were trying to be more experimental, but it was also, in spite of trying to be more experimental, it was more about the aesthetics than about the story.
Yeah, definitely. That's what actually, for some reason, didn't appeal to me. I wanted a story with my aesthetics, and heavy metal didn't really have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I like Exterminator. For example, I like Exterminator 17, which was written by Dionnet and had art by Enki Bilal. But yeah, the story's it's pretty basic. It's because Bilal is a great artist. He has a great way of drawing you into the universes he builds. But if that thing was drawn by some schmo just getting out of Marvel Comics Presents, the writing would not have saved it.
Now, here's another thing too, and this ties in with Jared. Some of your Dreams of Things characters seem like they would fit into heavy metal a bit. Yeah, I think so. They've got that sort of dream. Heavy metal had a big dream-like aesthetic through some of its art. Mm-hmm. And here's something I noticed about heavy metal. I've always been a teetotaler my whole life, so I've never taken drugs. But some of my friends who are my age who liked heavy metal also liked getting stoned and reading heavy metal. So,
yeah, I don't think.
I think my art fits in with stoners too. So, yeah.
I don't think heavy metal is right for stoners. I think you really need to be into LSD.
They could have been taking some of that too. I'm not saying they weren't. I was probably 16, the comic says, the first time I saw a heavy metal magazine, but it was at a vinyl shop, so I didn't even bother to open it. Yeah, I can understand that. Like, who'd buy a comic at a record store? Crazy. I might have thought that same thing when I was 15 or 16.
Well, heavy metal was made for a different crowd, so they kind of made sense that they would try to sell it in a record store.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like head shops selling underground comics.
What I find odd is how heavy metal keeps going in the United States, because Metal Hurlant was canceled in 1987.
Wow. And the current version of heavy metal is freaking expensive.
Yeah.
It's like $14 an issue.
Mm-hmm.
That ain't cheap for a magazine. Holy cow.
Sure. It does have a lot of pages. It does have a lot of pages.
It does? I don't know. I haven't seen it in so long. I don't know how many pages it has.
Either 128 or 144. I can't remember exactly.
You're right. That's a lot of pages. That's a good size. Like I said, I haven't seen it physically in a while. I have picked up some of the sort of reprint collected ones they do. Have you seen any of those?
No.
They're only like 32 pages, but they're magazine size, and they take like 3 sections of whatever story that's running and print it in this 32-page magazine for like $3. So I've picked up a few of those. Like they had a Bart Sears one. They had a couple. They're not even complete story, but I'm like, for $3, I'll give it a read. So those ones are actually, I have picked up some of those. And I picked up that Tarna miniseries that was comic book size.
Yeah, that didn't look as good as one would expect.
It looked all right. I thought it was pretty good. I noticed Image has a new anthology book, kind of heavy metal Image version. Never bought. Well, I think what was the name? That one was out a couple of years ago. Remember just a few weeks ago I showed that like collected edition thing I got. I forget the name of it. That turned out to the Island. That was the name of it, I think. It turned out to be from it was a heavy metal like anthology from, I forget who the 2 artists were who edited it, from Image. It ended up being like 12 issues or something, or 24 even. The Island, I think, was the name of it. I never bought it, but I liked that one story that they published out of it. I can't even remember the name of it now. But that was pretty good. And Image has a new anthology that's not like heavy metal that the first issue just came out of. The Island. What was the name of that story? Oh my God, it's driving me crazy now. It was the sci-fi story that took place on the giant spaceship that broke down. And like generations ago, and all the different crew quarters were 3 generations removed and still trying to do their jobs. Oh well, I'll remember it someday.
Issue 3.
What are you looking up, Paulo?
I'm looking up Island on the Grand Comics database, see if I can remember.
Yeah, I think you looked it up.
I did look through that, and then I forgot.
And me too. You looked it up. You told us all about it, and we both forgot.
Ancestor, was that it?
Ancestor, was that the one I got? I can't even remember.
I don't think it was this one. No. Let me see.
It was from like issues 7 to 13 of Island or something like that.
Yeah, so it was probably Ancestors.
I have to look at what comics I bought. Hold on.
Matt Sheehan and Malachi Ward.
Department of Truth. Nope. Before then.
Oh, no. Habitat by Simon Roy.
Habitat. That was it. Yes. You are correct. That was the one I bought. That was good. First Simon Roy I had read. Huh. I forgot. Kid Colin forgot to look it up too. It sounded cool. We all forgot. It was only like a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of stuff since then.
Yeah,
What
we even
page
had
of coloring are you on, Chris?
we even had the new mythology.
Huh?
What page of coloring are you on?
Well, I'm on page 21, but I skipped 7 pages so far.
Why would you skip 7 pages? You just didn't feel like doing them?
Because of the rate at which the flats are coming in from various flatters.
Okay, so you got flatters doing stuff for you. Okay. I did not realize that. That should help you out. Now, let me ask you a technical question.
Yeah.
Do you trap your coloring?
Or I always have, but this is the first project I've had where it's been requested that I turn in the files in layers.
Okay.
Usually I draw a letter, everything one flat layer from the beginning. It's all one. But now they're like, well, we want everything on layers, so they want line art on one layer, panel borders on one layer, lettering on one layer, balloons on one layer, sound effects on one layer.
Okay.
So I don't know how you turn that in trapped. Now I have an idea.
You expand the color.
Well, I can turn it in with the colors and everything in place, and I can put underprinting in there, and I can set the line art to overprint.
Right.
But whoever I hand it off to might not understand any of that.
Right.
And I don't know what they're going to do with it, and I don't know why they need it in layers. I can understand why they'd want to be able to take the lettering out in case they license it to a foreign language. But if I wanted to trap the balloons, right? They're on a separate layer. Then I have to set the balloons to overprint, contract, put a white layer underneath them.
Yep.
I don't have any faith that the person I hand the files to is going to understand why I did that.
Okay.
So I need to have a discussion with them. But normally, yes, I trap everything.
Okay. I was just curious.
This is the first time where I'm like, I don't like. My experience has been most people I'm dealing with don't understand trapping, underprinting, and don't notice that I'm doing it or why. Or
and they say you don't have to do it anymore.
That's another thing that keeps coming up is like, oh no, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that.
But I've seen stuff that's gone wrong.
Yeah.
It's usually the lettering though, not the artwork.
Well, that
they usually underprint the lettering and it shifts. Almost always that happens when I see bad trapping. But the lettering shouldn't be a rich black to begin with.
Right. That's
I'm sorry, we're just getting technical here. I just wanted to know.
Nobody followed that.
Nobody followed that conversation, but that's okay. We'll move on. We'll move on to the next comic I got this week, which is Aerosmith number 4, which I said in my video was number 3, but there's clearly a number 4 there hidden under that starburst. And it continues to be a good story. I enjoy it.
It's going places.
Yeah. They continue to be behind enemy lines, carrying out their mission. We got some werewolves or something in this one following them. We found out the big reveal was the guy he was working with is some kind of prince. I'm like, really? Am I supposed to care this guy's some kind of prince? Because I don't.
Well, the way he explains how he uses magic is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting stuff. I liked the description of the magic world and these guys in their gas mask. It was a good issue. I enjoyed it. You're reading Aerosmith issue to issue?
Yeah, not legally.
Oh, okay.
I'm definitely going to buy the trade paperback when it comes out.
Right. Yeah, I still want to get this one too. The reprint of the original. I have the original issues, but I want to see them uncensored. So.
Yeah, I actually hope somebody published that thing here in Portugal because that'll give a publisher an excuse to invite Carlos Pacheco to come over, and he can for me.
There you go.
I had 2 interesting experiences with Carlos Pacheco. He was invited to come to a con here in Portugal in 2001, and I had set up to get an interview from him, and he bailed. Made up some lame excuse and left me hanging, and I did not appreciate it.
Nope.
But then I went to I managed to get to a con in Ireland, set up to go to a cheap hotel. The shop that organized it, the guy that worked there was Portuguese, and he had worked at one of the comic shops I go to in Lisbon. So, and Pacheco was there, and now he was much nicer. I got to sit down with him. I recorded the conversation. Didn't end up publishing anywhere. It's too bad because it was a very interesting conversation. So yeah, in one he was definitely not into whatever, and the second one he was very friendly. So yeah, I guess it depends on
you
whether
just caught him on the wrong day that one time.
Yeah, I guess it was because there was a lot of things going on at at the hotel bar and people talking. I got to talk to Dougie Braithwaite too. Dougie Braithwaite was very, very nice guy. And it's a shame they didn't get to publish it anywhere because that thing was like in it was still in the 2 tape recorders ago, and I lost the file, so I don't have it anymore. And real shame. I suppose I could publish it because I've seen stuff in Alter Ego, unpublished interview from 1974. Really?
Right.
So yeah, I suppose talking about at the time, I asked Braithwaite about what was going on with what he was doing with Justice, and talking about how he had evolved. I asked Pacheco about at the time Aerosmith coming back because we were all impatient about his second miniseries that was never arriving, which is finally here. But I also asked him about the superhero comic he did in Spain before he started working for Marvel UK. Called Iberia Inc.
Pacheco won me over with Avengers Forever.
Yeah, I was already familiar with him from X-Men. It
was a lot. Fantastic Four.
He did Fantastic Four for a little while.
I may have noticed him there first, but it was X-Men Forever that won me over.
Yeah. The last 2 issues before Heroes Reborn.
Okay. I have a vague memory of him with Fantastic Four.
I think that his Avengers Forever is good because it was, instead of using a Marvel inker, whoever Marvel set up as an inker, he used one of his friends to do the inking for Avengers Forever, Jesus Mourinho. And that guy, they probably have. I think they have a studio. There's this team of people from Madrid that kind of work together. So it's Pacheco and what is the guy? Rafa Marin doing the writing. Pacheco also on art, along with a couple of guys who provide drawing and inking. Jesus Mourinho and Rafa Fontaris. Yeah, they probably have a studio together because they're always working together.
Do you remember the Avengers Forever fiasco when it was printed in a trade paperback?
Like, I noticed that it wasn't was not overprinted, or there's no trapping.
There's no trapping.
And I know I've noticed that, but I don't remember the fiasco of when it happened. Like, I don't remember being in the middle of hearing about, like, oh no.
Avengers Forever, the comic book, came out perfectly. Fine, printed fine. They were collecting it in a trade paperback, and somehow at Marvel, the files disappeared. The color files were lost. So they had to go back to the colorist, who I can't remember who it is. And for some reason, the colorist only had untrapped files of it. So that's what they used for the trade paperback printing.
That's weird.
It was really weird. For the hardcover printing.
Why wouldn't they just go like, okay, so give us those files. We'll get one of our guys to trap them.
There wasn't time. There was some reason that couldn't be done. I can't remember what it was, but that first printing trade paperback is like weird. That's the one where Paulo thought they were supposed to be white lines around stuff.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about the way it turned out. I actually think it makes it look good as a completed story, because it doesn't look like a typical Avenger story. It allows us to focus on the fact that they're traveling through time and everything is a little fuzzy.
I was talking to Mike Allred one time, or no, I was emailing Mike Allred. I worked at Image for a year on production, so I was talking to Mike Allred about his pages and explaining, like, I was just giving a brief explanation of trapping, and but I was like, yeah, because then if it wasn't trapped and the place shifted, then you're going to get these weird halos around all the lettering or whatever. And his response to that is like, wow, that might look cool.
To some artists, that's a style. Tit Goblin. I just watched the Disney Plus episode of 616 yesterday, where they interviewed some bullpen guys from Air for the episode. Oh, which one is that? I can't remember. Because there was, I'd seen a couple of them where usually I like when those come out, I take screenshots of whoever I know in there and post them on Facebook or something. So I think I post that. That was like a couple years old, isn't it? So there may have been some screenshots in one of the episodes from my era. I don't think I was in them though, because it's like the one that just came out, Marvel versus DC on Netflix or something. They're like little 15, 12-minute shows about the rivalry between Marvel and DC Comics. It's really cheesy most of the time. But they had like the late 80s era Marvel bullpen. They had a couple pictures from. Chris, did I tell you about, speaking of not signing waivers, just popped into my head. Do you know the like digital book I put together on the bullpen from like 94? I think that's a double secret probation. It was just a bunch of pictures I took of everybody in the bullpen right before the Marvolution 1. And I made it into a digital book and posted it for everybody.
I didn't know you did that.
If you go to jaredosborne.com, you'll find a link to it.
Okay.
But because of that, somebody who was making from one of the I forget which publisher it was, they were doing a book on women in comics was the book. But sort of a history I love women in comics.
Uh-huh.
And since someone had pointed them to that, so one of the editors sent me an email asking me if I had high-res versions of those photos and if I'd be willing to sign the release form. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, she knows the way she worded it, she knew that that's a terrible release form. And sure enough, I read it wasn't for no compensation. I would actually be okay with people using my photos for historical purposes, but you don't claim all the rights to the photo. They wanted to claim all the rights to the photo. They would still give me rights to the photos. I'm like, oh, great. You'll give me rights to my own photos? But they claim like all right, any right you can think of in the future they have for them.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
that's yeah. Well,
no, thanks.
Did you try to negotiate or just say no?
No, I just said no. I won't be willing to sign that. She said, "Okay, bye."
That's step one of
negotiation
process. And so if you ever want to move forward, you have to go like, well, listen, I'm interested in this, but you're going to have to, these things need to change.
Yeah, I didn't really care.
Yeah,
and she wasn't the one who I could just tell that nobody says yes to this. But also, you might not be able to negotiate. Like, did you ever hear like DC? You can't negotiate with.
Yeah, you might not, but you're definitely not going to find out unless you try. No one's going to bring you first right out of the gate. Deal.
But if you say no, I wouldn't sign that. If they wanted it, wouldn't they negotiate? Because I'll tell you the Dave Sims story.
You would think so, but they might not.
Well, you're right. I'll tell you the Dave Sims story. It was, it was no skin off my teeth if I didn't use my photos. So it's not like they were paying me.
Then Dave Sims wasn't it like I need you to explain where all these numbers are coming from?
He just said to D, I need you to. I need clarity on these points. And the lawyer just said, no, don't use them. This is like 2004 when an editor wanted Sim to do something for DC, sent him a contract. Dave Sim was like, huh? I need clarity on these points. And that was too much. The lawyer's like, no, you sign it or we don't use them. So we're not using them. So it's like, oh, okay. So there's no, I think a lot of places there's no negotiation unless you're, what's her name? The Harry Potter woman. Then they negotiate. But if you're not, if you're you and me, you don't negotiate. How come I can't remember her name?
J.K. Rowling?
Who?
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling. There we go. She's only really, really famous. Can't remember her name. Oh. DC certainly negotiated with her to make some Harry Potter comic. And another comic I got this week. I think this is the second to last issue of Homesick Pilots. This has been, because it says at the end, to be concluded. And I don't think that's just the story arc. I think the whole story is coming to a conclusion, as far as I can tell. But it's been, this last story arc has been very good. The whole, like the last two story arcs even. You know, the big fight between the haunted house and the mech suit run by ghosts, which sounds absurd. But it's been really horror scary these last couple issues too, as they go to trying to find the haunted toilet seat. It sounds so ridiculous. But another good issue. I can't wait to see how this story ends. Probably with either some ghosts dying. I guess ghosts can die. But it's been a fun one. I wonder what the sales are like on this. I can't imagine a ton of people are buying Homesick Pilots, but it's a good comic. Neither of you two have read it, right?
Nope. Who's got? I don't know how you have time to read anything. How do you ever do anything except color my book? How do you have time? How does people have time for that?
Hey. Last I heard, you never did anything except ink your book. Your story sure is changing. Listen, at some point, you've got to take a break from coloring your book. That's how you keep the pace up. You have to sit back, take a break, and read a comic for 10 minutes.
I'll read a comic when I'm dead.
That's how you do it. Lost and Found episode 4. They bring back damage control and list type team book a vehicle. Now, okay, I think I did see that one. Yes, I remember that. There was some stuff from my era there. I don't think I was in it. I'm going to look. I'm going to have to look. Remember, Chris, it's a good life if you don't weaken. Keep on coloring.
That sounds like it's from something.
That was the title of the book I was just talking about.
Oh, okay.
By Seth. Remember? Hunting Down Kalo, the cartoonist of the New Yorker.
Okay.
Only did a handful of cartoons.
That had to be at least a half hour ago.
How is he supposed to remember that?
Yeah.
Huh. It's not easy being Chris. So what are you coloring on now? The iPad or the computer?
The XP pen.
The XP pen?
Which is hooked up to my computer.
Which has a pad of its own, right?
So yeah, it's
Does it have a screen or is it touchpad?
Yeah, it's basically a Wacom, but it's a more affordable version of a Wacom.
Right. Is it good? Does it work?
Yeah.
Because the Huion I got, which wasn't a screen, it was just a pad, does not work that well. I must say, I had problems with it. Its sensitivity and insensitivity. That one's what's the name of that brand?
XP pen.
Okay. Well, what size is the monitor?
I'll show you. Now that I'm not using my iPad to draw on, I can actually
move it around.
I can give you the full tour if you want.
Oh, you want to show us the toys?
Yeah. How do I switch? It's a little different than Zoom. So the other side of the...
That wasn't it. Let's see. Here he comes again.
Okay.
That wasn't it.
That was not it. Settings. Let's try settings.
You might just have to
camera, back camera.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so that's pretty big. That's what, about 20 inches? There's six.
That's a good question.
He doesn't have a ruler.
Let's see. This ruler is 18 inches.
What was that?
This ruler here is 18 inches.
Well, corner to corner, what's the size?
18. So it looks like about 20, 21.
Okay, it's one of the bigger ones. All right. Those are good. Now Chris is going to show us some the many, many toys in the studio.
There's some Decepticons in the back there, some Lego guys in front. There's some Transformers there.
Ooh, is that a sound wave?
That's a Shockwave.
Shockwave, yeah.
Yeah. They got a sound wave right here.
Sound wave, yeah.
But these guys are a bunch of Lego guys. I got some legit Decepticons up here.
Ones he made himself out of Lego. Ooh, he's fancy.
Oh,
Let's see. Some of these reissues. Recent years sold at Walmart.
do you have any GoBots?
I don't have any.
Yeah, the GoBots were the cheap imitations back in the 80s.
The toys aren't actually that bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the cartoon designs for the Transformers are much better than the toys, because the toys are because the toys are designed to look good as a vehicle, not as a robot.
Right.
A Hulk.
Here's the hallway of justice.
That's a lot of Batmans in a row.
It's a ton of Batmans because Batman has had the longest animation run, and they got repaints galore of every conceivable iteration of the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
Thundercat, was that?
Lion-O. Two Lion-Os.
Got two Lion. I got the orange hair and the red hair.
Ah.
Variants.
Didn't even realize there was a variant.
Or is that a production mistake?
Don't know.
Yeah, take it as a variant. Oh,
I mean, it could have been a mistake, and it could have been a deliberate, like, oh wait, no, we need to.
We're out of orange. Make it red.
Yeah.
They could have not been thinking about it that much.
Here's the Galaxian machine I won.
Oh, that's the one you won in the contest. I remember you
Yeah.
telling us about that. Look at that.
Here we got a cool piece of Hot Wheels that stand that was been thrown out of a Borders or a Barnes and Noble that we rescued. It's got a cool, like a bubble case there.
Did it come with the Hot Wheels, or did you have to put those in there?
Oh no, it did not come with the Hot Wheels.
Okay, it was just the stand. I was just
Those
checking.
are mostly Smitty's.
yeah. When I was a kid, it was not Hot Wheels that I liked. It was Majorette. Because Majorette cars were real.
You know
the Hot Wheels, not so much.
Why am I not giving him the solo layout as he shows us this?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hamburglar.
Fantastic Four. We got a Dr. Doom.
You are not fit to say Doom's name in Doom's presence.
Pee Wee Herman. This is the most toys I've seen in one place outside of a toy store.
They might even be more toys than an average toy store.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Uh-huh.
Certainly a lot more variety than your average toy store. They may have more toys, but they have like 900.
Yeah, I have to introduce you to some guys who collect car miniatures.
Oh,
those were the battle action models, the ones that you hit them and it rolls over.
Yeah, battle damage armor.
One lady He-Man.
I forgot the names of most of those characters from He-Man.
Does any of this look familiar to you?
No.
No.
They look like those ones that you bought, like the sets that, like the generic action sets that you bought at Toys R Us or something like.
These are Fisher Price Adventure People.
Ah, okay.
Like here's like a whole news team.
That's a news team? No. That equipment is too expensive to let actual journalists handle.
That's a cannon.
Yeah, well, it was the 70s.
Mine the comic says Chris needs a cat. And some cat needs that room. Knock everything over.
Well, so this is a studio shared by 5 guys.
Yeah. This is 5 people's toys.
Yeah. Although it's mostly 2 people's toys.
It's mostly you and Smitty.
Yeah.
Up Tit Goblin likes how you display your mad balls.
Oh, the suspended wires. Those are Smitty's. That's his idea.
Ah, Smitty suspended the mad balls. Smitty, writer of Officer Clausen.
Exactly.
That Chris is drawing.
We got the World Wrestling Federation superstars from LJN.
Hey, there's Mean Gene Okerlund.
His name is Connor McLeod.
Let me tell you something, Mean Gene.
If you say your prayers and drink your vitamins.
Hook Hand Aquaman.
The Max.
The Max.
Ooh. Ren and Stimpy.
Spawn.
Muttley. I love Muttley.
Here's a really cool Adventure People toy.
Ah, that guy. I only recognize him from Toy Collectors.
X-Ray Man, I think is his name.
That gave me an idea. Remember when Wizard and Toy Fair used to publish those pictures of people doing their own custom action
toys?
figures? Yeah. That Fisher Price I can turn into the Enigma Force from the Micronauts.
Meet the Mets. Greet the Mets.
Smitty's a big Mets fan.
Bring the kiddies, bring the wife. Have yourself your time of your life.
And did you ever drink a cocktail from those tiki cups?
Never have. The tiki cups are fun. The tiki cups are funny. Smitty bought something on eBay.
Oh, that's Frankenberry, Count Chocula, and Booberry. I didn't realize.
So Smitty bought something from a woman on eBay, and these showed up instead of the thing that he bought. So he contacted the woman and was like, "Listen, you sent me these things, but I didn't order them. So whoever did buy them, you probably want these for them." And so she's like, "All right, I'll get you the thing you bought. I'll send that out to you, and just send these back to me." But Smitty didn't want to pay the shipping for it. Or no, it wasn't that. It was he liked them enough that he's like, "Well, I want to keep them." So in order to replace them, he just bought another set of them from Amazon and had them shipped right to her. for less than like I think she was selling them for or something. I don't know.
Wow.
Something weird. But it's a
Goblin says, sadly, no Ninja Turtles. Macho Man.
No Ninja Turtles.
Mine the comic says, how often do you dust? It all looks great. There's the Ninja Turtles.
Pretty much never.
Never? They're on shelves, so it keeps the dust off them mostly, I imagine.
Super Grover.
Usagi Yojimbo. Usagi Yojimbo next to Firestorm, of course.
Why not?
Captain Planet.
That's not Captain Planet. That's the evil version from that episode where they create a bizarro Captain Planet.
It's evil
Hitler
Captain
Planet.
Planet. Where's his
Yeah,
goatee?
he's not from a parallel dimension. He's like the evil Superman from Superman 4.
He's winning right now. Just in case anyone's keeping track.
Ruh-roh. Scooby Gang. The amount of cosplayers who like cosplaying Thelma is amazing. Macho Man Turtle.
I stumbled across this. I'd never even heard. I didn't know that they did this, but well, I guess I need that.
I didn't know that they did that until right now.
There are a lot more people on the internet who want to bang Velma than they want to bang Daphne.
It's amazing. Clerks in black and white and color. Not even supposed to be here today.
I think this front one is a mall rat.
Oh yeah, you're right. Is a mall rat.
It's Adventure Time.
Indiana Jones with Adventure Time.
Speed Racer.
Go Speed Racer,
Bendy
go.
Speed Racer. Woohoo!
You know, there's an actual car in the Japanese Super GT Championship that's painted like the Mach 5.
That's awesome. And go Lion.
Go Lion.
Thanos.
I think it was
Gumby?
Go Lion in Japan before it was Voltron here.
Ah, okay.
There's a Mach 5.
Oh,
Look
yeah.
at that down there. Playmobil Ghostbusters in a box.
There's a giant He-Man.
Oh. Galaxian.
There's a microwave we got to get rid of. Anybody want one?
No thanks.
I got a better one.
What are those ones just piled on the floor next to the microwave? They're waiting for a home.
So yeah, Smitty's trying to assess where to hang these up on the walls, and we literally run out of space.
Yeah,
But
get rid of the comics.
There's a pile of the Fisher Price people.
Okay.
There's a pile of the worst Super 7.
What is
Okay.
that?
That's Snake Tut.
Who came up with that?
Super 7.
Robot Reaper.
Robot Reaper.
My
That should be a character in
business would know all these.
Robot Reaper should show up in a new Bill and Ted movie.
Black Falcon.
Black Falcon.
He doesn't look like a Black Falcon.
I don't feel tardy. X2, the unknown.
The unknown.
And these ones are designed never to come out of their packaging.
Well,
package is like part of the thrill.
Well, no. So these plastic cases that I'm holding are They're like.
Oh yeah, well
like
those ones. I mean, the
boards.
ones you just showed us, the worst, I think.
Huh?
Those ones look like they're designed not to come out of their packaging, kind of. Like the packaging is part of why you buy that. Because those are made by toy guys who want to make they're not made by like mass market toys, right?
Well,
Am I wrong in that?
They're getting into Target now.
Okay, maybe I'm completely wrong.
Yeah, that's where Julio works now.
Where does Julio work?
He works for Super 7.
Oh, okay. Where are they based?
I don't know, because I don't think he goes into an office. I think he works remotely.
Okay.
But is this what you meant? Like, this isn't supposed to come out of this package?
Right. It's not supposed to come out of that package.
Well,
it's supposed to be a thing you collect.
I mean, that's everything.
Well, no, it's like He-Man toys kids were supposed to play with. But not all toys nowadays. They make like toys as collectibles to not come out of the package, kind of. Like, unless like it is getting into Target, so maybe kids will play with them.
Jared, this is going to sound crazy, but it's all up to the person who buys the thing.
You're right, but sometimes it's up to the makers too. What audience they're aiming for. But if they're getting
exactly
the
the same
target,
way.
I would say they're aiming for the open the package market.
You're on cardboard and you can open these. Like, you know how it is. Like some
Oh
collectors.
yeah,
will buy
I'm saying
two
I know
complete sets.
collectors don't open them, but some toys are made just for collectors these days. Is what I'm saying, and they're not meant to ever be opened. Kind of. They.
Yeah, I think a lot of the. Do you remember? I don't know if you'll remember. This is like 2003 or 4. Were you still? Yeah, you were still around.
Yeah.
And they did the GI Joe. Some guy did like he dubbed over all the GI Joe PSAs.
Oh, I can't forget that. You guys played them endlessly.
So Super 7 put out 2 GI Joe figures based on that. Because so yeah, that's what I've seen in Target is they have GI Joe figures on sale in Target and Walmart. But I want to see if I can find. I don't know where Smitty put them. If they're in here.
He's showing us the chair.
Oh,
lovely chair, beautiful chair. Body massage, and I'm a computer. I'm a computer. For those of you who don't remember, sometime in the early 2000s, one of the first something that went viral was somebody took these PSAs from the G.I. Joe cartoon and dubbed goofy nonsense over them. And it was before the age of social media, so they just kind of got passed around the internet. And everybody who was at Marvel, who was around Chris's age, who were G.I. Joe fans, played them over and over and just giggled and giggled. Me, as somebody who was a little bit older and, you know, G.I. Joe was a little bit after my time, was always like, what are these kids laughing at now? What is this nonsense? I don't get it. What's going on? I'm a computer? Huh? But man, did they play him a lot.
Hey, G-Man Lego.
Look at that.
Right.
Custom-made G-Man Legos. For those of you who don't know, G-Man is a comic strip that Chris does. You can find it. Where can you find that? At the webcomic? You can find issues. You can find collected editions of it too. But for the last few years, it's been a webcomic on ChrisGComics.com, is it?
That'll get you there. Although I've rebranded as ChrisGeruso.com, but both
ChrisGeruso.com. There you go.
Both links will work.
So now you know how to get there.
And you can get the G-Man Super Journal on Amazon.
Over the top. Pork chop sandwiches? Was that from that?
Yes.
Titkovlin knows it.
Yeah.
Pork chop sandwiches.
Go to super7.com and get yourself a body massage, and I'm a computer.
Super7.com.
It's a pretty cool bat clock.
Oh, look at that. That is neat. Is that a Marshall Rogers Joker? I'm not sure where the Batman is. But I think that's a Marshall Rogers Joker. Maybe it's a Marshall Rogers Batman too. Not sure. That might be a Jose Garcia Lopez Batman.
Yeah, that was going to be my guess. I was having trouble summoning the name.
Right, because he did all that licensing art. I just recognized that Joker pose from, I think, a Marshall Rogers comic. Yep, and there's a Batwoman at the 6.
Is that Batwoman or Catwoman?
I think that's Batwoman. Or is it Cat? I don't remember that green cape costume on Catwoman.
I don't either, but she's got her ears look more cat-like than bat-like. And didn't Batgirl have orange hair?
That's from a short while before pre-crisis, wasn't it?
It's saying 89.
89.
But that
doesn't mean they couldn't have used old art.
Yeah. The Hall of Justice. Macho Justice. Huh. Who's that guy in the gray armor? I don't recognize him at all. Next to Macho Man.
Oh, that's what's his name?
That's the retcon guy they came up for Hawkman after they said that Qatar Hall did not exist, right?
Ah.
No, this is the future son of Hawkwoman and John Stewart Green Lantern.
What is that Zardoz Sean Connery guy's name next to Flash?
That's Samurai.
What was that?
Samurai.
No, next to Firestorm. The guy in green and orange.
Samurai.
Samurai is his name.
That's not Zardoz?
No, Samurai and Black Vulcan and Apache Chief were the ethnic characters for the Super Friends.
Do you know who I'm talking about? He was a 70s Superman like villain based on the Sean Connery movie, like Zardoz, I think.
Yeah, the name was Vartox.
Vartox. That's who I thought that was. Okay. Not him. Lots of Hawk people.
Yeah.
I had a Hawk Girl figure once, like 10 years ago. She fell off my desk and her head popped off, so I threw it away.
Young Aquaman and a much more.
He grew up a lot, didn't he?
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, a lot taller and worked out.
Got some superpowers. There's another samurai, the superpower samurai, missing his tunic.
62 Lefty Blues says awesome collection.
The elusive Clark Kent mail-away figure.
Ooh.
That fashioned into a spirit.
This is the redesigned Orion for the toy line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no.
It's weird is the fourth world characters that they put in the line all look different.
62 Lefty Blue said, I had 2 ex-wives whose heads popped off, so I had to leave.
Oh, Secret Wars.
Old costume and new costume.
Yeah.
That's a pretty terrible Spidey head on that old costume. They didn't really get those webs right, did they?
Well, it could have been worn right off. Oh, yeah, I guess, yeah.
No, that's not worn. They just didn't get it. They just didn't care.
You didn't get it too good. But, that's Mantis and the Parademon, and like all the fourth world designs are vastly different than they were in the comics.
Yeah.
And the reason is because they went to a guy to design the toys for them, and they went to Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby drew them all different. Except Darkseid is pretty much the same.
What happened to that guy's arm?
It's very common to find these with an arm missing because of the power action features.
Ah, okay. There's some Image Comics guys?
There's some Image Comics guys.
Look at that.
Oh.
There's another Macho Man.
Yeah.
They did this Masters of the WWE universe, the combined Masters of the Universe with wrestling.
Okay, so
Macho Man at Arms.
Is Macho Man your favorite wrestler or Smitty's?
Mine.
Okay.
There's a bunch
Savage
of Savage
Dragon.
Dragons.
She-Dragon. Well, what's that red guy's name?
Barbaric.
Barbaric.
A bunch of Toy Biz.
Ah.
It's a Deathlock. Spider-Man 2099.
Some X-Men. Some Hulks and things.
Greg Capullo era X-Force.
Oh. There's a spot.
Doc Simpson.
This is Morph in every version of him.
Wow.
He was packaged with 4 heads? Living Morph, Dead Morph, Cyclops head, and Wolverine head.
So you had to buy 5 more figures to put the head on each one?
I go out with my toy hunting buddies, and then you come across them, and they're very common figures, so they're very expensive. So
it's easy to get 5 of them.
Yeah.
Don't have to chase them down. Hulk by. Who's that Hulk by? It looks like a Kirby Hulk, but it doesn't look like Kirby.
Oh, that's Kirby.
Oh, that's Kirby. Yeah. Now that I look at it, it's the hair that didn't look like Kirby as much. I wonder who he. Jack Kirby, 72. 72, I think that is.
Could be a 7.
I think it is. What have they done to Thor now? Walter Simonson? Turning him into a frog? 115.85. Find out beginning issue 363.
There's that dinosaur.
There's that his signature as a dinosaur. There's some Kirby.
Yeah.
Next issue, Avengers. Star Wars. A faded John Buscema poster.
Yeah.
And some Star Wars. Who did the Star Wars? Is that Al Williamson?
I don't see a signature.
Somebody else. Or generic Star Wars guy.
Yeah, because I don't see any signatures.
An angel with a crutch?
What is that?
Let's see. 62 Lefty Blues asks, do you have a Bonesaw McGraw, Macho Man?
No, I don't. No, I guess
Just comes. Omega Red wants his outfit back, Barbaric. Graphic Man says these are green. There's Barbaric. There he is. Omega Red and Barbaric. The age of the shoulder pads.
They both got shoulder pads, but that's about it.
Both got
boots are similar, yeah.
Buccaneer boot. They're not quite Buccaneer boots, but
they got those shin pads built in
with knee pads on
knee
them.
Pads. But Barbaric is practically naked here. Barbaric's skin is all red, and I think Omega.
They both have yellow hair, long.
Yeah, Omega Red's skin is white, and he's wearing red clothing over it.
Barbaric is wearing more bondage gear.
I guess Omega Red does wear his hair like that sometimes too.
Ah,
that hairstyle is pretty close. Huh. Hey now,
a little compare and contrast. Falcon with wings.
This toy had me convinced that he was orange and white for like most of the time, like because that was. I think it was years before I looked at the pages and I was like, "Oh, he's actually red." Never. That's cool toy.
That is a lot of stuff.
I think I've exhausted the.
All right. Well, I'll show the last comic of the week then, which is Scott Koblish's.
Oh wait, here's something cool. I don't know if anybody would.
Hold on, let's see. We'll go back and see something cool. What is that?
Shockwave without an arm?
It's Shockwave. He's missing an arm. Well, the arm. I do still have the arm. You can see it dangling behind him there.
Oh, look at that.
Still attached. Still works.
Rodimus Prime.
But yeah, that's a Rodimus Prime behind him. But this is the one that they put out through Radio Shack, and they call
Galactic Man.
And it is referred to in fandom as Shackwave. Shackwave. But that was back in the days when Yeah, before they were exclusive to Hasbro, they,
Right.
Radio Shack had licensed out this toy from Takara. It's the same exact toy.
Huh.
He's gray instead of purple.
Ah, Shackwave. Very cool.
Okay, now you can cut back to your comic.
All right, last comic of the week was the one that Scott Koblish did. The Secret History of the War on Weed. And I like how it actually surprised me how much this amused me. Because you know how it is with comedy. Amazing Chris says, mind the comics. Thanks for the tour, Chris. 62 Lefty Blues.
You're welcome.
I found that version of the garage sale all glued together, says Tit Goblin about your Shackwave. And it's funny. I was talking to Scott about this week, and he said this all came together because one of the writers noticed that like months and months and months ago that one of the ship dates this year was 4/20, and he's like, "You want to do something with that?" And Scott was like, "Sure." So they came up with this project, and it's about this what's his name, and the writing is amusing, the drawing is good. Scott Connor will like all the amount of puns that are in the beginning. Iguana blow your head off instead of I want to blow your head off, and fun puns like that. But it's about this military guy who the president, who is clearly Nancy Reagan and takes place in the early 80s, the president sends out to start the war on weed. And then in order to, and this guy's just a crazy military guy who wants to, when he gets his orders, he gives them. So they decide what they're going to do with them is smoke them out. After the weed farmers capture them, they put them in this gas mask and get them really high on weed. And here's him getting high on weed and talking to collectors of first appearances. You'll want to know that in this comic is the first appearance of Weed Thing. And I gotta say, the humor really hit home with me in this one. I wasn't, with humor stuff, you never know. You never know if you're gonna like it or not. And this one just amused me and gave me a lot of giggles. And it's fun stuff. It's like 40 pages for $5. There he is in front of one of the big tikis, looking all 80s action hero and angry. The artwork is nice, is really well. The writing is really well done. Lots of good jokes and story and stuff in it. And the first appearance of Weed Thing. How can you not get that? This is going to be a hot book soon with that first appearance. We all know that.
It's going to be a key. It's going to be a key.
Yeah, let's start spreading that Weed
Thing
is going to be in a Hollywood movie.
Thing.
As part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I'm glad you picked it up. 62 Lefty Blues. A ton of action in the book. Yeah. There's more action in this book than I expected, and more the humor landed me pretty well, I have to say.
Yeah.
Which you never know if the humor is going to land with you, and I was glad it did.
Yeah, Weed Thing with smoke blowing action.
Weed Thing. And let's see. Tit Goblin asked me a while ago how my Gatsby illustration project is going. It's still going. I didn't get anything done on it this week because I had a sinus infection or something. It was kind of wiped out.
We got a cameo appearance by Randy Green.
Hey, Randy, how you doing?
Zoomers. How doing?
Artist. He's one of the ones who shares the studio with Chris and has drawn lots of comics. I have some original art of his by coincidence.
When I took you on the tour, I didn't show you his office, but he's got his office is full of Gundams.
Next time we'll get his permission and we'll take a tour into the Gundam office.
Yeah, I'm a robot. No, I love robots and Legos.
Yeah, he's my Lego partner.
And robots and Legos together. Even better.
Does he build Lego robots too?
I do.
Yeah, his though are a lot more, much like our actual illustration styles. His robot designs are
All copy from somebody else's.
they're,
Chris's are originals and mine are all copy.
they're hyper they're like you can't tell a difference. You wouldn't know that they're Legos when you look at them. You just think that those are, they're so complicated. But I go with just real boxy, simple 5 points of articulation robots.
The Transformers are your aesthetic.
Like you can see that my Lego robots are built out of Lego bricks.
Well, it was good seeing you guys.
All right, good seeing you.
Bye.
I'm out right back out. I just stopped in there.
That's what happens when you got an art studio. You've got people to talk to during your workday.
Crusty Bunkers 2.0.
What?
The Crusty Bunkers, the Neil Adams studio.
He's too young to know who the Crusty Bunkers are?
I've never heard that word before.
Really?
In the 70s, when there was a late job that often had to be inked, they'd send it over to Neil Adams Continuity Studios, and like everybody who's there would just work on the pages, and they were often credited as the Crusty Bunkers.
Oh.
Yeah. Then they dropped the. So it was just Crusty Bunkers.
Yeah.
And there were people who thought there was an actual person named Crusty Bunkers.
I just want to point out that, Paulo's younger than you, and he knows that.
He's more of a student.
I am a student.
Chris doesn't have time to be a student. He's coloring a comic.
Yeah,
Exactly. We have the time to read comics.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Kids these days.
He can't take a break. He's got coloring to do.
Yeah. I have time to learn about
it's
the
going to
Crusty
take him
Bunkers.
long. He's got flatters. He doesn't really even have color.
Still takes
How do your
forever.
flatters send them in, by the way? Do they do they try to put like colors that might work, or they just put any colors?
I had like a little bit of reference to give them on like 2 characters, so they'll follow that. Otherwise, it's just like, just fill it in flat with something. They try to pick stuff. It seems like for the most part that would make sense, but
They'll make skies blue and grass green.
precisely.
For those of you who don't know what flatters are in coloring, even though one person is usually credited with the coloring in a comic book, other people often work on it. And there's guys who specialize in flatting. What they do is, if you've got a comic book colored page, sometimes the part that takes you the most time in Photoshop selecting things. Like if you want to color just Spider-Man's head, you've got to select Spider-Man's head and drop in a color. And then you work on your shading or whatever else you got going on. So they got guys they're called flatters because all they do is drop in flat colors on a comic page. So like if there's a sky, they'll drop in just a solid blue on the sky, or any color, it really doesn't matter, just so Chris can select it with just one click. And if there's a car, they'll select the car with just one flat color, maybe the windshield with another flat color because the windshield's going to be light. And they lay in a whole bunch of flat colors so that Chris or whoever the colorist is doesn't have to make selections, which might take him an hour. It might take Chris an hour a page to make all the selections, but instead he pays a flatter to do it, who can probably get that page done in half an hour or 15 minutes, depending on how good they are. And because some of those flatters have all sorts of techniques because they're trying to work as fast as they can and save Chris time and earn money.
That is correct.
So that's what a flatter is.
You are correct, sir.
So occasionally you'll see them credited in like Image Comics or stuff. You'll see flats and colors. And that's what flat is. Now his Crusty Bunkers comic shop makes sense. The Crusty Bunkers. Still working with that thing on your palm of your hand?
Yeah, helps you. Otherwise, your hand will stick to the glass.
Okay, slide. I've just never been. I don't use one that much. I don't use the Wacom that much, but I've never used one of those. I've never been comfortable in one, but I've only ever had it on for 3 seconds.
Yeah, I mean it's only covering. It's basically just covering the side of your.
Yeah, I see a lot of people use. I've never worked on the glasses that much that I really need to use one. And every time I put one on, I've gone, oh man, take this off my hand. But I've never given it a chance. Have you ever tried using one of those second input devices like the TourBox Neo?
I don't know what that is.
Look it up sometime. I want to try one. It basically it gives you it plugs into you, and it's USB, or I think some of the newest ones are Bluetooth. It plugs in and it gives you a bunch of dials and buttons. And the TourBox Neo is meant to do by feel. And you can set up macros to all the buttons. So it's meant to, you're drawing with this hand, and you can use the TourBox Neo with your offhand to do any macros you use in Photoshop.
This comes with
Buttons on the side.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like that same concept, but taken up a notch.
Yeah, there's
because especially the TourBox Neo
on each side
is trying to be tactile, so it puts on a whole bunch of different types of buttons and a couple of different types of dials, so you can use them just by feel. You don't have to look at them. The problem I have with the buttons on the side of mine is I have to look at them. Yeah. So I've been wanting to get one of those, but I still haven't, because they're like $150.
I mean, I'd have to be convinced that it's going to save me a ton of time.
Yeah, me too.
I
just like trying new things too.
I use this to switch the pen tool to whatever it's
got. Okay. Interesting about Flatters. How many other jobs are there? Uncredited jobs? I don't know. I'll have to think about that. Production guys are usually uncredited, but not these days. You get some credit. I get my name in bad idea books, but nobody knows what it is. So. All right, we're coming up on the 8:45. It's time to sign off. So, anybody have any final words? Just about time for Paulo to go to bed.
Actually, I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna show the cover to that Portuguese Western comic I told you about before we started.
Okay.
The guy that we interviewed in Mind the Comics stream.
Okay.
Okay, so let's
share your screen.
Yes, let's share the screen.
Let's take a look at it. Western comic. There it is.
There it is.
Rattlesnake.
Rattlesnake by João Amaral.
Okay.
It's just hitting the bookstores in Portugal. And as I told you, drawn in watercolor.
Okay. Is the guy from Portugal?
Yep. The name is João Amaral.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you can see
Find the comics. Finger and triggers are a bit off. You got to watch out for those.
Yeah.
Thanks for the info on the tour. Yeah. The people, you really have to reference guns and triggers and stuff to get them exactly right, because you'll often see in comic books, especially in the old days, you'd see somebody holding a gun, and it was like they weren't holding it like they were holding. When you hold a gun, there's something in your hand, and you'd often just see like a fist with the top of a gun coming up out of it. There's no handle in his. There's no stock in his hand. That was common in comic books. They were drawn fast. All right. Any last comments, Chris?
Thank you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
His TED tour.
Well, thank you for coming to my TED tour.
All right.
That's a new one. Maybe we can trademark that. The TED,
TED
tour.
tour. All right. So everybody have a good week out there, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.